Hey, this is Troy from Planet 76. We've got some really good Sixers-focused content coming your way today. Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can be in the know when we release new content. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, to Planet 76, episode 63?
64.
64. Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael. Troy with me, as well as always. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast, as always, and follow us on Instagram. And, yeah, we're going to get into our player profiles this week. I almost said this week, for Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Tyrese. We are kind of coming close to the end of our player profile series in pretty due time as well because, again, the season is ever so slowly approaching. So we got to finish up these at some point. So we'll just get right into it. And Troy, if you want to bring us into our first player profile, go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited about these two for sure. So in Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Tyrese, two guys that have obviously been with the Sixers for a while. Tyrese Maxey entering into his third full season with the Sixers in the NBA, and then Tobias entering, I don't even know what season in the NBA. He's a vet, but his fourth full season in Philly?
With the
That
Sixers?
sounds right.
Yeah, probably.
That sounds right, and we're going to go with it. And you can pull that up. But so yeah, we're going to start with Tyrese Maxey and get a player profile on him. We hope you guys are enjoying these. But so Tyrese entering his third full season, and each season I think for him has kind of looked different as far as the expectation coming into the season. Each one, his rookie season, we didn't fully know what to expect. He was obviously on the bench behind number 25, and showed some flashes, I guess, and became a very important piece, I guess, off the bench in his first season in the NBA. And then last year, with all the drama that existed there, he kind of just really, really, really made a name for himself in this league, put the league on notice, if you will, and it was really cool to see him. Coming into the season, we weren't sure if Tyrese was going to start. We weren't sure how much minutes he was going to get. We didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. But this season, the expectation is even more different, as we expect him to perform at a very, very high level this year. So what are even your thoughts on just kind of what he's done so far in the league and the expectation for this year coming up?
Very not similar to all the guys we covered on this list. Tyrese has only played a few years in the entire league, not only with the Sixers, but the entire league, since he's only going to be a third-year guy this year. We've talked about Tyrese a lot here on this podcast. I've talked about him a lot on my page as well. Trust the love if you don't go follow me. But I just think it's this season is going to be a season where we can really gauge the kind of player that Maxey's going to be for his career. Third-year players tend to really have, not solidified themselves, but have really kind of gotten their footing in the league and really understand what they can do and where they can improve. And I think with Tyrese Maxey, that is going to be the same. I think that stands for true for Tyrese Maxey, because I know I can only speak for myself in this situation, but I have pretty high expectations for Tyrese Maxey. I'm sure lots of people do. Obviously, the degree obviously varies of what those high expectations look like. The degree of high, if you will, what that looks like is different for everybody, but I would like to think that he takes another small leap, whether it's scoring wise or just a few little things like shot creation, creating for himself, really,
Mm-hmm.
which he was really, really good at this past season. He was one of the best slashers in the NBA. He was one of the best in the NBA at getting to the rim based on his own self-generation. Like, he was able to do it by himself. He didn't really need someone creating scoring opportunities for him. Obviously, James Harden helped with that a lot, but Tyrese Maxey necessarily didn't. He didn't necessarily need that, as we saw in the early portions of the season. So I'm just really excited to
Right.
see what else he adds to his game, because like I said, he could still add a lot to his game defensively. I'm hoping he can sustain that level of three-point shooting. I'm not sure he can, but I hope so. He's great. His 2-point percentage has been great his entire career so far. I expect his 2-point percentage to either increase or go up
Mm-hmm.
as well. On probably, he took 9 2-point attempts per game last season, which was really good, and that made up basically all of his field goal attempts overall. So I'm hoping and expecting that either increases or stays around the same, because that would be great. And like I said, his 3-point shooting, I think he could be an even better 3-point shooter. Obviously, 43% on 4 attempts is very solid. I would like to see him shoot a little more, maybe like
Yeah.
once or twice more per game, just to really solidify himself as an elite 3-point shooter, because in my opinion that would be an elite 3-point shooter, especially when you consider, again, quite a decent percentage of those 3-point shots are self-generated. He's really good at getting his own shot, and that, I think, is going to remain the same his entire career.
Right. Right. Yeah. The leap he took, obviously, from year 1 to year 2 was significant. And even just not only in his performance and like how he played, but just the fact that he went from a guy that was a rotation player, wasn't even really the sixth man, to someone who, I don't know how long it took into the second season of his. Like, I don't know how long it took for him to become like that guy who we know is going to be out there every single night in the starting lineup. I forget exactly how long that took, but like that's where he got to this season. And he got to a place where, I mean, again, he put the league on notice in more ways than one. He had a 38, 39-point performance against the Bucks in the regular season. He had a great back and forth battle with someone. With the Grizzlies. I mean, he's just good, and it's just going to be really, really exciting to see the leap that he's going to take this year. Like you noted, I mean, he has a lot of good stuff going for him, obviously, and what he's built, in his time in the NBA. But it's going to be interesting because we know that he's a hard worker, and so it's going to be interesting to see what he's added to his game, what little improvements he's made. Because again, this is his first time coming into a season where not only do the Sixers know his role and what he's going to be, but teams around the league know what he's going to be doing and looking to do. And there's going to be a scouting report for Tyrese Maxey, and he's going to have to deal with that, in this coming year too. So, what do you think? Like you noted, I mean, we saw a lot of Tyrese Maxey without James Harden. What are you looking for in a positive way that maybe a full off season, a full season coming up can do between what's going to coexist of a backcourt between James Harden and Tyrese Maxey? How do you think he can benefit? How do you think the team can benefit by having those two together for a full season?
So, one thing I will say about this is that every team in the NBA, there is absolutely no, I guess, what's the word I would use? There is absolutely no negatives to having a guy or multiple guys who are elite off-ball players. And when you talk about elite off-ball players, you're moving without the ball, you're coming off screens, you're cutting, you're flying to the rim. Tyrese Maxey has been a guy who has been really good at that. And like we talked about it before, I'm sure in college, he was sort of that off-ball guard. He wasn't really a primary ball handler kind of playmaker,
Right.
as he was this past year. He was really good at that. But that's not really his primary role, and I think putting James Harden alongside of him really unlocks that ability, and I think having James Harden here further is going to allow him to unlock and improve that ability even more, Because, like I said, if Tyrese Maxey can become, I mean, not like Steph Curry elite off the ball, because no one can really do that. But if Tyrese Maxey can become
Right.
just really, really great and reliable off ball, especially as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, as a guy who can just get the ball on the wing and just dive to the rim and draw contact, draw the defense. That would be great for the Sixers, and I think he's gonna I think that's one thing that we can probably rely on him to be able to do consistently at a high level, at least maybe not this next coming season, but in seasons to come. And I just think it's going to what you asked about the Sixers, having a guy like that is extremely beneficial to a team, especially like the Sixers, who, not a slight to them, but their two stars are extremely ball dominant. Their two stars kind of really need the ball to be productive. James Harden a lot more so than Embiid, because Embiid, sets screens, he rolls to the rim, he's good at catching lobs, so he can do things like he can be productive without the ball and help the Sixers without the ball. But for the most part, those two guys, your two best players, are extremely ball dominant. So you need guys around them who can move without the ball and be productive without the ball. Obviously, having shooting helps, but having a guy like Maxey helps a lot more. Like I said, a guy can come off screens. He can cut to the rim without the ball. He can make plays without the ball, set screens even for others if he wants to. That's extremely beneficial to the environment of a team, especially like the Sixers.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I just think another, again, this off season, training camp and just another 80, a full 82 games together for that backcourt, and is going to benefit, the relationship that they have on the court together, and just going to benefit the Sixers as a whole. So,
you think Tyrese Maxey makes the All-Star League?
It's exciting to think about what Tyrese is going to do.
What?
I would love that.
Same.
But I'm going to say no this year.
Yeah, I'm going to say no as well. Not that he won't be deserving necessarily, but that the East is going to be so stacked with guards that he just doesn't get it. And I think that was the case last year. Like, the East was really stacked with guards. Like, LaMelo Ball was an injured reserve, and he was probably really deserving of an All-Star slot, but he didn't actually make it as an official All-Star. So I think we could see something similar this year with Tyrese, where he might be deserving. He'll average 19 before the All-Star break, 19 on like 45, 39 from three, and like 80 from the free throw line, or 85, whatever, from the free throw line. Maybe he'll be that elite in the box score, but he won't make it. It's kind of what I'm saying, which would be crazy. So I'm also going to say no, unfortunately. But it would be cool. Extremely awesome.
It would be
have three
very
All-Stars.
Cool.
Wow.
And again, considering even the leap that he took from year one to year two, like 1 year ago today, I didn't think we would be thinking about and talking about Tyrese Maxey in this way. So based on what he did this past season, it's exciting to think about what year three is going to bring for him, and credit to him for all the hard work that he puts in, and I'm excited to see how he fits. So, you could say, obviously, he and the other one that we're going to get into in just a second, Tobias Harris, these two guys are X factors, and you mentioned that to me, before we went on, recording, but they just are, and not X factors in a sense of like, if the Sixers are going to make the playoffs this year, these guys need to play well. Like, the Sixers are well beyond that. But they're X factors in the sense that, like, if the Sixers want to make some noise this season, like real legitimate noise, get to the Eastern Conference Finals kind of things, then these guys need to play very, very well. So, you want to move on to Tobias?
Let's do it. Oh, you mean
all right. So Tobias Harris entering. I'll start.
Yeah.
Entering another full season with the 76ers. Yeah, so Tobias entering another full season with the Sixers. And exciting to see how he's going to pair alongside P.J. Tucker, at the forward positions for the Sixers in what is looking to be the starting lineup for the upcoming season. Tobias is a guy that seems like we've talked about him a ton on Planet 76 throughout these last 63 and a half episodes now. And a lot about his contract, a lot about his ups and downs, a lot about how he was maybe the Sixers' most consistent player in this past playoffs, just a lot about, is he going to get shopped? Is he going to get traded? But here is the bottom line. Tobias Harris is a very good NBA player, and he's been very good for the Philadelphia 76ers, and he is an important piece if he's here through the regular season and through the playoffs. He's an important piece if the Sixers want to make some noise. And so what are your thoughts on Tobias and his performance this past season, his performance in the playoffs, and how he fits even with these this new bench depth? Bench depth. I mentioned PJ Tucker. There's some guys on the bench that we've recently added as well. Danny Green is no longer here. You think about, you bring in Daniel House, you got George Niang, you got Furkan, Matisse, like a lot of wings in that 6'7", 6'9" range of player. How does Tobias fit in this kind of new look Sixers? Is it a different role completely for Tobias? Or I have one thought on how it could be different for Tobias, but I want to hear your take on Tobias coming out of last season and coming into this new one.
I'm very excited, and I'm very optimistic for Tobias this season. I think it's going to be I think he's going to have a very productive season, whether that ends up with him averaging more than 17 points per game, which he averaged last season, that's great. Whether it's him being a lights-out three-point shooter but still averaging less points, that's fine too. I would love to see Harris shoot a lot more threes. Just as a reference here, last season he only took 4, which I would like to see him shoot way more than that. Back in 2019, he shot 5 per game, which coincidentally was his best scoring year in the last 3 years. And I don't think that's a coincidence. He took 5 threes per game. He made 1.8 per game, 37%. Now, last year, he did shoot a higher percentage on less attempts, but he also made 1.3 and took 3.4. So he only made basically 1 3 per game, which is okay, but it's not great. I was about to say Tyrese. Tobias is a guy I believe who thrives on volume. He needs shots. He needs attempts. He needs touches. He's a guy who he's kind of like a microwave, if you will. That's kind of a buzzword, but I kind of like it for Harris.
Right.
He needs shots and he needs volume, especially from 3.
Yeah.
I think he is best as a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. Not saying that he should just be reduced to that role, but I think that's where he's at his best. I think he's his most productive when he's catching and shooting with as little dribbles as possible. And I think having James Harden is going to help with that. I think having an improved Tyrese Maxey playmaking-wise is going to help with that. I think another season of Embiid's improved passing ability is going to help that a lot too. So I'm very excited and optimistic for Harris. I think he's a great fit for this team. I always have thought that, and I won't stop thinking that because it's what I believe. And I think he's going to have a really good season. Last year, I can't really pinpoint to you what some of the issues were. Obviously, he had sort of a down year. He had his lowest points per game scoring season since 2019. He had a down year in terms of 3-point shooting, down year in terms of 2-point shooting, down year in terms of free throw percentage. So, 84% is still really good, but you would like to see just more. I want to see more from Harris. I want to see more shots. I want to see more threes. I want to see more volume. I want to see more attempts. I want to see more. So that's my theme for Harris here, and I would like to think that I'm going to get to see that. Hopefully.
Tobias Harris, he is one, and I want to see if you agree with this. He's one that I think, in my opinion, his role throughout all the different players that have come in and out. Now, it's not like he's gone from the bench to starting lineup to the bench to the starting lineup to, he's always been a starter on this team. But from the very first year he came in when there was Jimmy Butler, then Jimmy Butler's gone, and then there's, the Seth Curry era, then there's, this new era with James Harden and all the different pieces. Like his role, especially in the offense, has changed a bit. Like with each and every season that comes, each and every trade that comes, like things kind of shift a little bit for Tobias Harris and what we expect from him as well. So the way I see it for this upcoming season, the big change surrounding the starting lineup, obviously, is out goes Danny Green and in comes PJ Tucker. Now, those guys are going to play the 3 and the 4, and PJ Tucker, while he and Danny Green are both, PJ Tucker shoots like top 5 percentage in the NBA from the corner, right, from 3. Yeah. But I think one of the differences between the two players, obviously, is kind of what they bring to the table as far as rebounding and defense. And, PJ Tucker is he's a scrapper, and, he's going to get in there. He's going to get boards. He's going to get some games where he's going to have 10 rebounds a game. And, I think that's a difference. I think that affects Tobias more than anyone else in the lineup because, that allows for some of what you're saying maybe in Tobias Harris to be outside more. Tobias Harris to be, a catch-and-shoot guy. Tobias Harris to get out on the break because he's not being relied on to get as many rebounds. Because we may not have gotten bigger. PJ Tucker's only, 6'5", 6'6", but he plays bigger. And so he's a guy that, again, is going to get a lot of those rebounds. And so I think that changes a little bit what Tobias can do and, his role in this offense. I agree, though. I 100% agree. I'd like to see Tobias Harris shoot more. He is certainly a guy that is a capable scorer at all 3 levels, mid-range, inside, and from 3. But particularly, again, with P.J. Tucker coming in, and, again, this brand-new season, again, with James Harden, first full season with him, Tobias should have some open looks. Again, another notable change in Tobias's career in Philadelphia is when the Sixers bring James Harden in, and now that they have Tyrese Maxey who can score in bunches and create his own shot, like that's a completely different era from the Sixers 3 years ago, when if we needed to go and get a bucket, the guy that we would probably trust on that's a perimeter player and the guy that's not named Joel Embiid would have been Tobias Harris. Now that's not the case. And you think back to some of those offenses that the Sixers ran because of their limited ability to create off the dribble. Tobias Harris was put in kind of a funky spot, but because they have Tyrese Maxey and James Harden now, and doing what they're doing, Tobias isn't relied on to create his own as much. And I think that's, to your point, he just needs to be a guy that's going to catch and shoot. So his role has changed, especially even over just the last couple seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think when you look at, like I mentioned, overall volume, Harris nearly had a 50-40-90 season just 2 years ago. And I'm not saying that I expect him to replicate that in any form, but like we talked about a couple episodes ago, if he did it once, it's pretty easy to assume and not expect, but foresee him being able to do that again, right? Do you think that makes sense?
Absolutely. I mean, he can do it. He can do it. He just got to be put in the right spots. And I hope that, again, with all these transitions that have happened, around Tobias Harris in and out of the, in the lineup and on the bench, with all these transitions and changes that he's been through. I hope that this new one that we're walking into for the 2022-23 NBA season is the best one yet, as far as, the comfort level for Tobias and the ability for him to thrive, on this Sixers team. I hope that this is the best one yet.
Me too. Me too.
So let me ask you this. So, obviously, again, the difference in the starting lineup, the projected starting lineup that you and I foresee, is PJ Tucker in for Danny Green. Do you see that kind of maybe playing out a little bit, how I've kind of discussed how PJ Tucker is more of a rebounder than Danny Green, more of a a defensive guy than Danny Green, even though Danny Green used to be in his younger days. But how do you see that connection? Because again, these are guys that are going to play the forward spots, and so how do you see that playing out, or how do you want to see it play out?
Well, I think. Oh my gosh. I think it's gonna help the Sixers on the glass because, like you said, Tucker's a really good rebounder, especially for his size. But he's a better rebounder than Danny Green, and I think Tucker, is. I don't really think it's gonna matter what if Harris plays the 4, if Tucker plays the 4, because both guys are gonna be pretty much on the wings for the most part. Hopefully they just give Embiid the paint to roam on offense. But rebounding on the defensive end is going to help a lot with PJ Tucker. Even on the offensive end, he does a pretty good job of crashing the glass offensively. And I think adding that rebounding element, that defensive element, kind of helps Harris too, because it's going to take a lot of pressure off him defensively. Like, he's not going to really have to guard the second or third best player. He could guard the 4th best, 5th best player, depending on who it is. And then, in turn, he'll have a lot more to give offensively because he's not having to exert as much effort defensively. He can give more offensively. We see this in the NBA today with the stars of the game, the stars of the game, like with Luka, with Trey, even with Joel occasionally, especially the past few seasons. He's had to do so much scoring-wise, playmaking-wise, where he hasn't been able to exert as much defensively. So hopefully that returns, but I think the same can be said with Harris as well, and I think Tucker's going to help out with that.
I will say one last thing with PJ Tucker and Tobias Harris and that connection and the new look lineup and all that, because I think you raise an excellent point regarding defensive matchups and all of that, because largely I've been focused on the offensive end, but on the defensive side of the ball, having a guy like PJ Tucker can only benefit Tobias Harris. As you mentioned, Tobias has had to, line up across from, first, second, third options, especially if they're, teams who have a lot of guys on the wing or, 2, 3, 4 positions that can fill it up. Like Tobias Harris has had that matchup, especially this past season without number 25. That changes. Danny Green would see that a little more, but, would see that a little bit, see some of those lineups. But with PJ Tucker, you really like to think that this will only help Tobias because he's not going to have to guard the the 1, 2, 3 options quite as much. Will he be matched up with them from time to time? Absolutely. But with PJ Tucker, Tobias shouldn't have to guard that hard, as hard as he has, and as improved as a defender as he is. PJ Tucker's going to help a lot with that. He just is. So a rebounding and the ability to defend 1 through 5 at times for PJ Tucker is going to benefit not only Tobias but the rest of this lineup as well. So excited to see how they work together.
Very excited.
And our
Very
connection
excited.
is bad again. Anyway, I don't know what's going on.
What? Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. This is a first, and we're not even going to cut it out because if you're loyal to this Planet 76, you're going to stick with us through this. This is episode 64, the first ever episode where we've had this much interference via the technical difficulty. So anyway, thank you for tuning in to this episode 64. player profiles: Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey, X factors, if you will, for the Sixers if they look to make a long playoff push this season. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Again, my name's Troy. That's Michael, and this has been another episode of Planet 76. We will see you next week for episode 65, and by that point, we're only going to be about a month away from the season, so gear up with us here on Planet 76. We'll see you next time. Peace. Are you on Instagram? Why don't you go give us a follow at Planet76 Podcast so you can be in the know when we drop new episodes. Thanks for listening to this one, and we'll see you next time.